Warnings. The following broadcast contains high-octane nightmare fuel gathered from the darkest corners of the internet. Keep your eyes on the road. Keep your doors locked. And whatever you do, don't look in the rear-view mirror. You are listening to Grave Shift, 18 Wheels to Hell.
We often talk about the global supply chain as this abstract, almost frictionless concept. Goods move from point A to point B, and they just show up on our doorsteps, like magic. But the reality of that whole infrastructure is so human, and it's also incredibly isolated. You have thousands of people, operating these massive machines in the dead of night, traversing landscapes that most of us only ever see from an airplane window.
It's a completely different world down there on the asphalt. Yeah, when you strip away all the logistics software and the delivery guarantees, you're left with a single person or maybe a small team just navigating the void. And that void, well, it affects the human mind in some very specific, documented ways.
Exactly. And that is really the focus of today's deep dive. We are looking at a first-hand account from an OTR that's over-the-road truck driver. And this is not just a story about, a delay or a flat tire. It's a case study on what happens when the mechanical safety of that supply chain just fails and two drivers are forced to confront something that, it defies all logical explanation.
The source material here is fascinating because it starts as a technical problem, a simple breakdown, and it just spirals into this psychological crisis. We really want to analyze the specific elements of this encounter, the environmental factors of the high desert, the physiology of the drivers, and that fight or flight response that just completely overrode their professional training.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We need to understand the who before we get to the what. We have a team driving setup. For those not familiar with the industry, team driving is designed to keep the truck moving, like 247. One person drives, the other one sleeps in the bunk right behind the seats.
It's a really efficient system for freight, but a grueling one for the humans involved. You are living in a box smaller than a prison cell with another person for weeks at a time. And the source notes a very specific dynamic here. The narrator, he takes the night shift, and his partner takes the day shift.
And there's a medical reason for that, right? The partner is night blind.
Yes, the medical term is nyctalopia, and it doesn't mean you're totally blind at night, but your eyes just cannot adjust to low light conditions. On a highway with, oncoming high beams and then pitch black surroundings, that's a lethal condition. So the division of labor, it wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. The narrator had to be the one piloting this rig through the darkness.
Wow, that puts a lot of pressure on him. He is the sole guardian of the vehicle, while his partner is literally unconscious in the back.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about where they are. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, Central Oregon.
Geographically, this is critical context. Central Oregon, specifically the route they were likely on, is high desert. This isn't the lush, green Pacific Northwest that people imagine. It's arid, volcanic, and empty. At 3 a.m., the isolation is absolute.
The source mentions they hadn't seen a town or even a light for 2 or 3 hours. And maybe even more unnerving, they hadn't seen another vehicle for at least an hour.
That detail, it speaks to a phenomenon often called highway hypnosis or white line fever, but it also touches on sensory deprivation. When you're driving in that level of darkness, your world just shrinks to the cone of your headlights. Your brain is starved for visual input. And when the brain is starved, it starts looking for patterns. It becomes hypervigilant.
So you're lulled into this trance, right? The rhythmic hum of the diesel engine, the tires on the pavement.
Yeah.
And then that trance is shattered.
Violently.
They suffer a double blowout on the trailer.
Okay, we need to pause and explain the physics of this because blowout sounds like a flat tire you'd get on a sedan. A semi-truck tire is inflated to around 100 psi. When one explodes, it's like a shotgun blast going off right next to your ear. It releases a massive amount of kinetic energy.
And the source specifies it was 2 tires.
Right, so you have this concussive noise that probably shook the entire cab. The partner sleeping in the back would have been jolted awake instantly. The truck would have lurched. The driver has to fight the steering wheel to keep 80,000 pounds of cargo from jackknifing. I mean, it is a high adrenaline, life-threatening event just to get the vehicle stopped safely.
They managed to pull over. And of all the places to break down, the universe has a very dark sense of humor. They pull off near an exit called Dead Man's Pass.
Nomenclature has such a psychological effect. Names like Dead Man's Pass or Hell's Canyon are usually historical. They reference the difficulty of the terrain for early settlers. But for two guys stranded in the dark, effectively blind to their surroundings, that name acts as a primer. It sets a subconscious expectation of danger.
So they're stopped, the adrenaline is pumping, they get out to inspect the damage. It's bad. 2 trailer tires are just shredded. They can't fix this on the side of the road.
And this is the transition. This is where they go from operator to victim. As long as that truck is moving, they're the masters of their environment. They're in a fortress of steel the second they stop. They're just 2 people standing on the side of a desolate road. They call dispatch, and then they enter the most dangerous phase of the night. Wait.
The source says they were waiting for a call back.
Waiting creates a vacuum. When you're busy fixing something, your mind is occupied. But when you're just sitting there, waiting for a phone to ring in an area with probably spotty service, your situational awareness expands. You stop looking at the truck, and you start looking at the void.
And that's when it appears. Both drivers notice it. An eerie light coming from the edge of the woods.
Let's analyze the position. The source says it was about 40 yards in front of the truck off the highway. This is near space. It's close enough to be relevant, but far enough to be obscured.
The logical part of my brain just said, don't look. You know, you're in Dead Man's Pass. You're alone. Lock the doors. But they didn't do that.
No. And that is a very, very human trait. We are curious predators. When we see something that breaks the pattern, a light where there should be no light, we have this biological urge to identify it. Is it a threat? Is it a resource? Is it another person?
The narrator says, we had some time to kill. That strikes me as such a casual justification for doing something so incredibly risky.
It's a coping mechanism. I mean, boredom and anxiety are close cousins. Investigating the light gives them agency, gives them a task, so they leave the safety of the pavement.
And I want you to picture this walk, 40 yards. That's almost half a football field. But in the woods, in the dark, that feels like miles. You're stepping over scrub brush, the ground is uneven, and the truck, your only sanctuary, is getting further and further away behind you.
And as they get closer, maybe 10 yards away, the object, it revolves. And this is where the story shifts from a breakdown anecdote to just high strangeness.
It wasn't a campfire. It wasn't a tent. It wasn't a house.
No, it was a goat.
A goat. But let's be very, very specific about the tableau because the details are what make this truly disturbing. This wasn't a wild animal just grazing.
No, the goat was hanging upside down, suspended from 2 trees.
Which implies immediate, intelligent intervention. Goats do not hang themselves.
Exactly. This is a staged scene. But the detail that pushes it into the realm of the surreal is the lighting. It was wrapped in Christmas lights.
And the lights are on.
This is a perfect example of what you'd call contextual incongruity. Christmas lights are associated with joy, holidays, suburban safety, warmth. A dead or hanging animal is associated with slaughter, predators, death. When you combine those 2 things in the middle of a desolate wilderness at 3 in the morning, the brain creates a syntax error. It can't process the information. It's too absurd to be real, but it's too specific to be a hallucination.
The source mentions they couldn't even tell if the goat was real or fake. They were close enough to see it, but the lighting, it was deceptive.
Yeah, Christmas lights cast a very specific broken light. They don't illuminate, they just glow. So you have this silhouette, these little points of colored light, and this hanging mass. The ambiguity, that actually heightens the fear. If they'd walked up and saw it was a plastic prop, they might have laughed. If they saw it was a fresh carcass, they'd be disgusted. But not knowing, that keeps the threat level at maximum.
And then the practical questions start firing. The source immediately asks, how were the lights powered?
That is the Sherlock Holmes detail that makes this so terrifying. We're in the high desert. There are no outlets on the Ponderosa Pines.
So, a battery pack, a generator.
Well, a generator would make noise. In that kind of silence, they would have heard the hum, so it was likely a battery rig. But think about the logistics of that. Someone had to hike out there. Someone had to carry a goat reel or fake, which is heavy. Someone had to string the lights. Someone had to rig the suspension. And crucially, someone had to turn it on.
That's the part that gets me. Batteries die. Christmas lights do not last forever on a battery pack.
Exactly. This wasn't set up 3 weeks ago. It's likely set up that night. Or someone was nearby, maintaining it.
Were they being watched?
That is the implication. You don't set up an art installation in the void unless you are the audience or you're waiting for an audience. The drivers, they became the unwilling audience.
This brings us to the reaction. We talked about fight or flight. This was pure flight.
Instantaneous. The curiosity that drew them out there just evaporated. The second that image registered, they didn't take photos, they didn't poke it with a stick, they ran.
We immediately ran back to the truck. And here's where I want to focus on the aftermath, because I think this is the most important part of the story to understand just how terrified they were. They get back in the cab, they still have 2 blown tires.
Right. Let's talk about the economics and legality of trucking for a moment. You do not drive on blown tires. It's strictly prohibited. It damages the rim, which costs hundreds of dollars. It can destroy the wheel hub, the brakes, the mud flaps. It can throw rubber debris into traffic. It's a massive safety violation.
So if they get caught or the damage is severe, they could lose their jobs. They could be liable for all the repairs.
Exactly. The rational professional decision is to lock the doors and wait for the repair truck. But they didn't do that.
The source says they drove for 70 miles on blown tires.
70 miles. That's over an hour of driving. Imagine the sound, the vibration, the truck limping along, shaking the entire cabin. Every single mile they drove was compounding the damage to that rig and increasing the risk of a total mechanical failure.
That is a desperate act.
It's the ultimate proof of their fear. They weighed the tangible, guaranteed consequences, thousands of dollars in damage, potential firing, legal trouble against the unknown threat in the woods, and they decided that the unknown threat was worse.
He chose to destroy the machine rather than stay at Dead Man's Pass.
It creates a fascinating hierarchy of needs, doesn't it? Safety from the Christmas goat outranked job security, financial stability, and all the road safety regulations. That tells you that whatever primal alarm bell went off in their heads, it was deafening.
It reminds me of those stories where people lift cars off their children. You know, adrenaline just overrides physics. Here, fear overrode logic.
And notice the finality of it. The source says, we were not going to stick around and find out the answer to those questions. They accepted the mystery. They accepted the financial hit. They just wanted to exist somewhere else.
It leaves the story in this beautifully frustrating, unresolved state. We don't know who did it. We don't know why.
And that unresolved nature is why we're talking about it. If they had stayed and found out it was some fraternity prank from a local college, this story just vanishes. It becomes a funny anecdote. But because they fled, the image is frozen in time. It remains a monster.
It really makes you think about the concept of the open road.
Mm-hmm.
We romanticize it as freedom, but the story just highlights the vulnerability.
Yeah, the road is a thin veneer of civilization. We pave over the wilderness, we put up signs, paint lines, and pretend we've conquered the environment. But stories like this remind us that the wilderness is still there, just a few yards off the shoulder, and it doesn't follow our rules.
The juxtaposition of the mundane trucking life. You know, logs, tires, dispatch calls, colliding with this ritualistic, bizarre imagery is what sticks with me. It's the clash of 2 completely different worlds.
It's also a violation of the safe space. The truck is their home, the road is their office, the woods are supposed to be empty scenery. When the scenery starts hanging goats and lighting them up, the world just stops making sense.
I also wonder about the trap theory. Do you think there was any malicious intent toward the drivers specifically?
It's hard to say. The timing suggests coincidence. They blew a tire at that specific spot. It's unlikely someone sabotaged the road and set up the goat. But the fact that the lights were on, it implies someone knew they were there. Or, terrifyingly, the lights are always on at night, waiting for anyone.
Both options are equally disturbing, yeah.
There's a concept in folklore of the liminal space, these thresholds between the known and unknown. A breakdown lane at 3:00 a.m. is the ultimate liminal space. You aren't in a town, you aren't at your destination, you are quite literally nowhere. And that's where these high strangeness events always seem to occur.
So bringing this back to you, the listener, we've all had those moments where we're alone in the dark. Maybe not with a semi-truck, but maybe a flat tire on a back road or walking to your car in a dim parking lot.
And we all have that internal radar, that gut feeling.
This story validates that feeling.
It does. We so often try to rationalize our fear. Oh, it's nothing. I'm just being paranoid. These drivers didn't do that. They acknowledged the anomaly, they acknowledged the fear, and they acted on it.
Even at a high cost.
The cost is irrelevant if the alternative is not making it home. We can critique their decision to drive on blown tires from the safety of a recording studio, but in the heat of the moment, staring at a hanging goat glowing in the dark, I think most people would have slammed on the gas.
It definitely changes how I'll look at those dark patches of forest next time I'm on a road trip. You just assume it's trees, but you never really know what's 40 yards in.
And maybe it's better not to know. Maybe the lesson here is stay on the pavement, keep the doors locked, and if you see lights where there shouldn't be lights, don't go looking for the switch.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with the image that these drivers are left with. They're 70 miles down the road, safe at a truck stop, probably inspecting the shredded remains of their tires. They had to explain this to their boss. They have to fill out an incident report.
How do you even write that report? Cause of damage? Christmas goat?
Exactly. It
Yeah.
sounds insane, but it was real enough to make them run.
It's a reminder that the world is vast and strange, and not everything in it has an explanation.
So here's a final provocative thought for you listening right now. Put yourself in that cab. It's 3:00 a.m. You're exhausted. You're miles from help with a broken vehicle. You see a light in the woods. Would you have investigated? Or would you have stayed in the cab? And more importantly, sometimes, is running away on blown tires the smartest survival decision you can make?
Sometimes the damage to the machine is the price you pay for the safety of the soul.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Drive safe out there.
Keep the shiny side up and the shadows in your rear view. You've survived another grave shift. Over and out.